Okay, I will just check if I am live or not. Just it will take a minute. Okay, I am live now. Just give me 30 seconds. Okay, I am back. I'm feeling very sleepy today. I don't know why, but my it's draining out. My energy is draining out. It's happening too frequently, and so yes, it's 11th of March 2026, and it's day 3 of Aeon of studying Aeon by skipping and everything. It takes an hour at first, but gradually it will take much less time. Okay, so today's I won't say topic. Today's title of the newsletter is Dreams of a Maoist India. India's Maoist guerrillas have just surrendered after decades of waging war on the government from their bases. Okay, so the author is Rahul Pandit, Rahul Pandit, and it is edited by Sam Hesselby, Hesselby. I don't know what's the correct pronunciation, and it has 4,600 words. It's just so this is of politics and government genre. So yeah, let's start. So this newsletter is going to be about the Maoist dreams and how the Maoists were in India, how it began, and now they have surrendered. Okay, so let's start. On 6th April 2010, a company of India's Central Paramilitary Soldiers came under attack from the Maoist guerrillas. I will just make sure it's guerrillas or what. I will just make sure I'm pronouncing it right.
Gorilla.
Guerrilla. Okay, it's okay. I'm right. Maoist guerrillas not gorillas, but guerrillas. Fuck. Maoist guerrillas. Guerrillas. Gorillas. Not gorilla, gorillas. Gorillas. Maoist guerrillas in the central eastern state of Chhattisgarh. The Maoist people mainly stays in Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, and Madhya Pradesh, and Andhra Pradesh, and in West Bengal also. Yeah, the Maoist revolt started in West Bengal. Okay, let's continue. The Maoists who had turned this region into their stronghold had laid a trap with little training and scant knowledge of the Amazon-like jungle. The Indian paramilitary soldiers found themselves ambushed. They fought back, but they couldn't escape the ambush. 75 soldiers and a state policeman accompanying them were killed. Never before, never, never before had the Indian forces suffered so many casualties in a single incident. Not even in Kashmir, where more than 20 years had been fighting on a protracted battle against the Islamic extremists. I'll just zoom in because I'm kind of blind. Okay. Uh, as the body bags of the soldiers reached their native places in the different parts of India, a deep sense of anger generated among the people who, till recently, had only an vague idea about who these Maoists were, and even less about the hinterland that the Maoist has turned into a guerrilla guerrilla zone. Okay, so in the first two paragraphs, we can came to know about an incident that happened on 6th of April 2010, where the Maoist guerrillas ambushed uh, a force, not a force, a company of Indian paramilitary soldiers and a state policeman, Chhattisgarh police, and 75 paramilitary soldiers were killed in the ambush. India has never seen such a high level of casualties, such a so many casualties um, before, not even in Kashmir, where the Indian soldiers were fighting for 20 years against the Islamist extremists. When the bags of those when the body bags of the soldiers reached their native places of their homes in the different parts of India, a deep sense of anger generated among the people. Okay, among the natives, among the known relatives, and all over India. Among the people who, till recently, had only a vague idea. Uh, the people were angry, but they don't have a very clear idea who are the Maoists, how they operate, and how they turned the Chhattisgarh the jungles in Chhattisgarh, in a guerrilla zone, in a guerrilla zone. Okay, since the mid 2000s, the Maoist has grown in strength, launching audacious attacks against the government forces and looting the police armories and declaring certain areas as liberated zones. Their operations ran in a contiguous arc of land from the Nepal border in the east to the Deccan Plateau in the south, an area the Maoists call Dandak Aranya or DK, using the name in its historical sense. This region, this is a region where the Indian indigenous people, the Adivasis, lived. It also holds valuable minerals and other natural resources in abundance. The Indian state wanted control over the natural resource wealth, but the Maoists were proving to be an obstacle. Then in 2009, the then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh called them India's greatest internal security threat. Okay, in this paragraph, the author is telling that in the mid 2000s, the Maoist has grown, Maoist had grown in strength and launching audacious attacks, launched attacks and ambushed many times in to the government forces like the paramilitary forces, the state police, and also looted the police armories like the guns, the bullets, and everything. Okay, so and they also uh, captured, or they have some specific regions in the jungles, and they call that areas or zones as liberated zones and name them as Dandakaranya or DK. Okay, I don't know what's the historical sense. I don't know that. In these regions, the Adivasis live, and it also holds valuable minerals and other natural resources in abundance. Okay, that Dandakaranya zone or the DK or the liberated zones that were, I mean, claimed by the Maoists. Okay, that Maoist zone have valuable minerals in abundance. Means lots of minerals are there. Okay, the Indian state wanted to control over that natural resource, obviously, for wealth, and but the Maoists proved themselves as the obstacle to for the Indian government to get control over that resources or the natural resources. And in 2009, the then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh uh, called or declared the Maoist as the greatest internal security threat. Okay, on the morning of the attack in 2010, I did landed in a part of DK. I did. Did the author landed? Oh, I had landed in a part of DK. Okay, in a city, a 3 hour ride, uh, car ride from the edge of the town, beyond which was the forest ruled by the Maoist. Okay, from there, if one started walking, one would, without getting, if one started walking, one would, without getting on to a motorable road, reach the spot of the Maoist ambush. There would be only a sparkling of tiny helmets inhabited by the Adivasis who thought of Maoist as the government. Okay, the Adivasis of that region thoughts or thinks that the Maoists or the Maoist forces were the government. Okay, beyond that, they had very little idea about the life outside. Least of the least of all the blitzkrieg of the India Shining, a political campaign by a previous government, the conservative BJP, which had in spirit continued to exist as a cursor to the economic optimism. Okay, this I don't want to read all this from the historically in a Hindu caste who Adivasis has been lived for a it was difficult to come outside poverty and bitterness. It's all general knowledge. Okay, the author calls the Adivasis as A. Okay, good. People had begun to talk of $1 trillion economy, while some areas of the while in some areas the poor would still die of hunger. I would spend a day or two in that city and then travel towards the edge of the town from where a Maoist sympathizer would pick me up from a stipulated spot after a bike or jumpy tractor ride, followed by a walk of several hours. Contact with a Maoist squad would be established. Contact with a Maoist squad would be established. From there, I would travel with them sometimes for weeks, for one helmet to another. Hamlet. Okay, Hamlet. I mispronounced it or mistakenly pronounced Hamlet as helmet. Here, it's Hamlets, tiny Hamlets. In every way, Hamlets are uh, houses, raw houses, raw houses. I don't know, say raw houses, but temporary houses or some kind of houses made by straws, straws and bamboos and mainly of natural elements. Okay, it can be of It can also consist of soil or mud. Okay, and sometimes I forget the word and just fumble. Okay. Crossing the rivers and hills, evading the bears and the venomous snakes, hoping that once I returned, I wouldn't be gripping by a fever, which would indicate a malaria endemic in these areas. 12 years earlier, my own history had prompted my interest in Kashmir and the Maoists. My family belonged to a small Hindu family minority in Kashmir, the only Muslim minor majority state in an otherwise Hindu majority India. In 1990, we were forced to leave as the Islamist extremists began targeting the Hindu minority. In a few months, the entire community of roughly 350,000 people were forced into exile. For journalists through that expulsion was not very newsworthy, as the Indian forces began conducting operations against the militants, resulting in brutal clampdowns and sometimes excess against civilians. Kashmir became a dangerous place, but for journalists, it turned out into a hard harbinger of awards, of grants, and fellowships. Okay, so in this paragraph, the author is saying that how he traveled to the Maoist camps and get in contact with them. And here the author is explaining why he, as a journalist, he got involved or he got interested in Kashmir and Maoist activities, or what's happening in Kashmir and the Maoist activities in the eastern India. Okay, and he explained in 1990s how the Hindu minority were forced out into exile from Kashmir, and roughly 350,000 Hindus were there, and they were all exiled from the from Kashmir, and it became a Muslim majority state. Okay, and otherwise India is a Hindu majority country. Okay, but Kashmir became an dangerous place even for civilians, and recently uh, the Pahalgam attack proved it. Even for the tourists, it's a dangerous place. Uh, what to say? But for journalists, it turned out to be a heaven. Okay, heaven for awards. Any journalist who had reported in Kashmir would get awards. Who had reported in the hostile areas in Kashmir where stone pelting were done or any insurgency operations were carried out. If any of the journalists have went through them, have went there and reported anything, they will get awards, grants, and fellowships. It's all about money and fame. Okay, for the journalists. I decided to go away from Kashmir, not at the first by design, but at a chance, but by a chance trip to the Gurila zone. I had barely traveled beyond Delhi, but sorry, just a few hundred miles south of Kashmir. But as I began exploring the mainland further, I ended up in the hinterland areas where India's poorest and the poor lived. In the new India, where people had begun to randomly drop into conversations, conversation terms such as $1 trillion economy. India is a $5 trillion economy. Sorry, five. No, it's going to be five, but it's a $4 trillion economy. But still, it's less. It's not enough for a population of 140 crores. I think 140 crores, right? 140 crores. It's not enough for 140 crores. If for 140 crores, we need a economy to be developed. We need an economy of around At least 30 trillion for 140 crores. For 140 40 crore of population. I don't know. I know that most of the 60% of the population is associated with agriculture. They don't pay income tax. They only pay tax on their profits and everything. Farmers don't have to pay income tax. Businessmen also get exemptions in income tax. Okay, so it's I know that billionaires also do charity to exempt to get exempted from income tax. But if all that taxes collected, India could have reached at least $10 trillion economy. At least I think so. I don't know economics. I am not an economist, but I think so. Okay, so I'm getting distracted. Okay, so let's get it done. What I saw in my journeys into rural India came as a revelation. In contrast, my own exile for of leaving a modest but comfortable home and instead facing the humiliation of living in a rundown home in exile in Jammu city seemed bearable. Maoists weren't yet receiving a lot of attention. The Prime Minister's prona- pronouncement about Maoists was more than 10 years ago, so it was difficult to convince the editors to cover them. But I persisted mostly because I felt that I was receiving a real education, one that a journalism school would never offer. In these years, the lack of government interest in the Maoist was an advantage. One could travel easily to the decay without invoking the suspicion of the security apparatus. Okay, here it is. Like the author is saying that, yeah, I live in Kashmir, but I traveled to the Maoist zone in the central India. Okay, where the poor people live. India's poorest of the poor people live. They even die of hunger. I think he's talking about the Adivasis or the tribal people. Okay, so where in the new India, people randomly start talking about the $1 trillion economy, but still people die in hunger in some areas, not all over India, but in some areas. Okay, his journey to the rural India was revelation of his own exile, comfortable home. He had comfortable home in the Jammu city, but he went to an exile in the Maoist region of central India, and yeah, he had a hard time to convince the editors to publish his newsletter. But as Singh's pronouncement that Maoists are the biggest internal threat was more than 10 years ago. Okay, now it's 2025, I think so. It's this article is of 2025. Yeah, it's 2025. What commenting? Okay, so all this yapping and all, nothing serious here. When I said goodbye to Adivasis and headed into the forest from where decay began, I knew I had to be more cautious. I had avoided spending more than a few hours in the city where we would meet a hotel reservation. We had made a hotel reservation would give would give me away could give me away, and the police would put me under surveillance. By the afternoon of the next day, I was in the Maoist camp under the trampoline sheet, meeting among others Gajarala Ashok, a Maoist commander, Gajara Gajarla Ashok, or Gajar Gajarla Gajarla. Gajar, Gajarla Ashok, a Maoist commander and another senior leader, a woman called Narmada Akka. Like, like most of the Maoist leadership, they both came from urban areas. These leaders had been teachers and engineers and social scientists, as social scientists, and college dropouts moved by the idea of revolution. They had came or come to decay with the same dream of establishing an Indian Yan'an, the birthplace of Chinese Communist Revolution. Okay, okay, but the core of the Maoist recruitment came from the Adivasis, and before that, from the working class and the peasantry among the Dalits and other backward communities. Okay, so next day, the after staying with the Adivasis, the author started moving towards the Maoist camp. He met one Maoist commander and another senior leader who was a woman. Okay, so the most of the author is saying that most of the Maoist leaders and commanders were came from the urban areas, and they were teachers, engineers, social scientists, college dropouts, and they were moved by the idea of revolution and came to these regions and became Maoist, became commander or some kind of senior leader in these Maoist camps. Okay, so the Maoist soldiers, the common soldiers, were recruited from mainly from the Adivasis, and previously it was done from the working class of the urban areas, the peasantry among the Dalits and other backward communities from the urban areas. Okay, and even from the tribal communities. The Maoists have decided to enter Chhattisgarh and its adjoining areas, which comprises decay in the early 1980s. That was the second effort to bring about a revolution. An earlier attempt had been made in the village of Nakshalbari in West Bengal in the late 1960s. Yes, the Nakshals and the Nakshalbari movement or the Nakshalbari protest was started in the village. It was a village called Nakshalbari. It's in Kuch Bihar, most probably in Kuch Bihar or Jalpaiguri or Alipurduar. It's in the northern part of West Bengal. Okay, so there it was started. Then it spread to Calcutta, and then it got spread all over India. The Nakshalbari movement. Okay, and eventually the Nakshalbari movement converted themselves into the Maoist movement and the Maoist revolution. Okay, so yeah, peasants who were tilled the fields of landlords and received only a minuscule proportion of the harvest rose against the inequality of the small share. The rebellion, who was inspired by the members of the mainstream Communist Party of India and the CPIM, the Communist Party of India and Marxists, who had begun to grow disillusioned with with their organization. The this questioning had also taken place in other parts of the world. In France, for example, on May 1968, leftist student protest. The protest the post-war left came to seen came to be seen as an obstacle to real social transformation. Um, what we do, sorry, what do we win by replacing the employer's arbitrary with will with a bureaucratic arbitrary will? Asked by the Marxist thinker Andre Gors. A similar sentiment had been expressed almost 40 years ago earlier by an Indian revolutionary Bhagat Singh, whom the British then hanged in 1931 at the age of 23. In a letter to the young political workers a month before his hanging, Singh warned that the mere transfer of power from the British to the Indians would not suffice and that there was a need to transform the whole society. Here was his quote: "You can't use him, the workers at a prison, for a pure purpose. You shall have to mean seriously and make him understand that the revolution is going to be his and for his good. The revolution of the proletariat, prolet, proletariat and for the proletariat." Singh's perception proved to be right, even as the Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, Jawahar, Jawaharlal Nehru, whose commitment to social justice could not be doubted, took over from the British in 1947. The poor and the marginalized communities, like the Dalits and the Adivasis, continued to remain outside the welfare circle of the 5 year plans. Feudalism did not go away. Land reforms to break up the feudal concentrations of the wealth and the and power were initiated, but the rich and the powerful also found means to circumvent the law. The rich quickly joined politics, and the police acted as their private militia. As recently as 2019, a survey by Indian government revealed that 83.5% of the rural households owned less than a hectare of land. The Government Planning Commission figures 1997 and 2002 put the landless among the Dalits 77% at 77%, while among the Adivasis was the 90%. The government's national sample survey in 2000 revealed that 7% of the landowners owned almost half of the total land share. I think I mean, I will continue with next day. Okay, it's totally exhausting for me. My brain, my energy is draining down, and it's, it's very difficult for me to continue in this way. My brain is draining down. I lost my ability to understand concepts. I will continue it next day, and uh, I need some rest today. Okay.